She told me people don't become strangers overnight, but she proved herself wrong. One morning, she simply stopped reaching for my hand. Stopped looking for me in crowded rooms. Stopped answering the kind of messages she once swore she'd wait lifetimes for. And when she finally left, she didn't even shut the door. She left it open, like she expected I'd still wait in the doorway, hoping she'd come back. I didn't cry right away. The shock was colder than grief, quieter than heartbreak. It felt like standing before a mirror that no longer recognized me, like every version of myself she once praised had been erased overnight. She walked away with someone new. Someone louder, brighter, easier to love, according to the whispers she never meant for me to hear. I should have shattered. And maybe I did, but so quietly the world mistook it for silence. Still, the strange thing about silence is that it echoes. And in that echo, I rebuilt myself. Now, she sees me everywhere. In the billboard she passes on her commute. In the interview that goes viral for the wrong reasons. In the name people now whisper with or instead of pity. She left me for someone new. But I became the memory she will never outrun. And she doesn't know it yet. But our story is only just beginning. Late autumn has a way of making silence feel heavier, like the world is holding its breath between seasons. That afternoon, the cafe windows were fogged with the breath of strangers, and the smell of cinnamon wove itself through my thoughts like an old memory I couldn't place. I sat alone at a corner table, hunched over my sketchbook, pretending to believe in the project I was drawing. In truth, I was drifting, moving my pencil only to keep my hands from trembling with the thought that maybe I wasn't enough for the dreams I claimed to chase. That's when she appeared. Not dramatically. Not even loudly. Just, gently, the way a leaf falls exactly where it needs to without anyone noticing its journey. "Excuse me," she said, leaning forward slightly. "Can I borrow a pen?" The question was so ordinary that I almost didn't look up. But when I did, her smile hit me like a warm breeze cutting through cold air, soft, unassuming, but somehow impossible to ignore. It was the kind of smile that made you feel like you'd been found before you even realized you were lost. I handed her my favorite pen, an old black one with fading ink, and she held it delicately, like she was aware of the weight of borrowing something that mattered. She scribbled something on a napkin, then laughed when the ink sputtered out. Her laugh. God, it felt like autumn leaves brushing against my ear. Light. Drifting. Familiar. She glanced at the empty seat across from me. "Mind if I sit?" "Just for a minute. It's crowded everywhere else." We both knew it wasn't true. Half the cafe was empty. But I nodded anyway, pretending it made sense. Pretending I didn't feel a strange pull toward her that scared me with how sudden it was. She sat down as if the seat had been waiting for her all along. "What are you working on?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. Her hair fell forward, brushing the table, and the scent of something floral, gentle, not overpowering, floated between us. "A design project," I murmured. "Something I'm not sure I'm good enough to finish." She didn't laugh. She didn't dismiss it. Instead, she looked at me with eyes that understood the weight behind my words, as if she could see the insecurity tucked between each line of my sketch. "Show me," she said softly. I did. And as she examined my work, really examined it, with a focus that felt almost intimate, I felt something inside me loosen. She asked questions that made me think, not about what the project needed, but about what I needed. She asked about my dreams as if they were precious artifacts. About my fears as if they were things I didn't have to hide. With her, honesty didn't feel like confession. It felt like relief. Time blurred. The cafe emptied and refilled around us, but I didn't notice. Her presence had a gravity that pulled me in without permission, without resistance. She carried her own weather, warm, bright, unpredictable in a way that felt dangerous if I looked too closely. When she finally stood to leave, I felt the moment slipping between my fingers like sand. "Oh, your pen," she said, tapping it against her palm. "Keep it," I replied before I understood why. Maybe because I wanted her to return it someday. Maybe because part of me wanted to tie her to me in the tiniest, most irrational way. She smiled again. Then she took my hand, my actual hand, and wrote her number across my palm, slow enough that I felt every stroke of ink like a quiet promise. "So you won't lose it," she whispered, looking up at me. Her touch lingered. I didn't breathe until she let go. When she walked out, the light from the door framed her silhouette in the kind of glow that only happens once, the kind that makes you believe the universe is trying to tell you something. But looking back, I realized the truth. Nothing written on skin lasts. Nothing that easy to smear should ever have felt that important. Yet as I held my hand against my chest, memorizing the warmth she left behind. I didn't know I had just handed my heart to the very person destined to break it. And the worst part? I would have done it again. We didn't fall in love all at once. It happened the way rain begins, quiet, unnoticed, gathering drop by drop until suddenly you're drenched without knowing when you stopped feeling the cold. Our days bled into each other effortlessly. What started as afternoon coffees, her favorite was vanilla latte, mine something stronger, turned into evening walks where she'd loop her arm through mine as if she'd done it her whole life. And then somehow, without either of us naming it, those walks stretched into nights where she leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered secrets that trembled like candle flames in the dark. "You make the world quieter," she murmured once, her breath brushing my neck. I remember the way her words shivered against me, how I held them like a fragile letter written only for my eyes. I believed her. Every word. Believed the way her voice softened when she spoke my name. Believed every promise she stitched between her fingers as she laced them with mine. She had this habit, one I didn't understand then but can't forget now. Whenever she talked about something that mattered, she'd trace shapes along my arm. Tiny stars. Messy flowers. Constellations with no names. I thought it was affection. A way of grounding herself through touch. But now, when I replay it, I see the truth beneath the tenderness. She was drawing maps. Maps she'd later use to navigate her way out of my life without getting lost. Still, back then, those moments were everything. I loved her with a devotion that felt almost religious. There was something sacred about the way she listened, tilting her head slightly, eyes softened, as if my words were treasures she didn't want to mishandle. She asked about my unfinished designs, the stories I kept hidden in sketchbooks that never saw daylight. She traced her fingers over my drafts, not critiquing, just seeing me in a way I had always wished someone would. Her encouragement came like gentle tides, lifting me, carrying me, making me believe I wasn't foolish for dreaming so loudly. Our bond grew quietly, like ivy crawling up an old stone wall. Beautiful. Persistent. Silent. But ivy doesn't just climb. It binds. And once it roots itself deep enough, it has the power to crack stone without meaning to. Looking back, I wonder which one of us was the stone, and which was the ivy. Sometimes she'd show up at my apartment unannounced, cheeks flushed from the cold, arms full of takeout she knew I liked. She'd drop her things, take my face in her hands, and say she had a bad day and just needed me. I let her in every time. Not just into my home, but into every part of me that had ever been lonely. At night, when the world felt too quiet, she would whisper, "Don't ever leave me." Her voice wavered, just barely, like the plea was heavier than she wanted to admit. And every time, like an obedient, hopeful fool, I promised I wouldn't. But she never said she wouldn't leave me. Not once. I should have noticed the imbalance. The way she leaned into my devotion without offering her own weight in return. The way her eyes sometimes drifted when I talked about the future, as if she was imagining a path where my hand wasn't the one she held. But loving her felt easier than questioning her. Easier than facing the possibility that the warmth she gave me might not last through winter. One evening, as we sat on my rooftop wrapped in a single blanket, she rested her head on my chest, listening to my heartbeat like it was a song she couldn't quite memorize. The city lights flickered below us, and for a moment, everything felt perfect, still, fragile, suspended. She whispered, "Sometimes I feel like you're too good for me." I tightened my arms around her, thinking it was fear. Thinking she needed reassurance. But now, I wonder if it was a warning. A quiet confession that she was already building a world where I didn't belong. And I, blind, hopeful, foolish, didn't see it. Didn't see that love can feel like sanctuary even while it's quietly leading you toward the door you'll eventually be pushed through. The night ended with her falling asleep against me. And me, holding her as if she would stay forever. But even then, deep down in a place I refused to acknowledge. I think I already knew. Forever was never part of her plan. Betrayal should arrive quietly, like footsteps fading down a hallway, or a whisper cut short. But mine didn't. It came blazing under fluorescent lights, the kind that flatten shadows and expose every imperfect truth. The industry showcase was supposed to be my night. Months of sketching until my fingers cramped, adjusting details until dawn blurred into day. My work, my heart disguised as ink and lines, was finally ready. She had insisted on coming. "I want to support you," she'd said, looping her arm through mine. Her smile had been bright enough that I believed her. She walked beside me as though we were a team, as though she had helped me build every sleepless night into something worth presenting. I mistook it for pride in us. For partnership. For love. In the main hall, bodies moved like waves, critics, investors, designers. My designs were lined up backstage, each one a piece of me I had bled for. I told her I felt nervous. She squeezed my hand, nails just slightly digging into my skin. "You'll be amazing," she whispered. But when the presentation began, she was the one who let go first. A different man walked onto the stage holding my portfolio. Confident. Calm. Familiar, too familiar. Her just friend. The one she swore I didn't need to worry about. He started explaining my concept, word for word. The same phrasing, the same metaphors I'd written late at night when I thought only she was listening. And as he spoke, she stood beside him, her expression soft and radiant. He talked about his vision. His process. His inspirations. Words that tasted like theft. And she laughed. A soft, knowing laugh that I had once believed belonged only to the two of us. Her hand brushed his arm the way it used to rest on mine when she wanted reassurance. In that crowded hall, I felt something behind my ribs crack, not loudly, but sharply enough that I forgot how to breathe. When her gaze finally collided with mine, time stuttered. I searched her face for a flicker of guilt, an apology, anything. But she didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She looked relieved. As if this was easier. As if severing me publicly was simpler than confessing privately. As if my devotion had become an inconvenience she had been too afraid to throw away until now. Someone whispered behind me, "Isn't that his design?" Another murmured, "Didn't he post sketches like that months ago?" People turned. Eyes widened. Recognition sparked. But she merely tilted her head, just slightly, an unmistakable gesture that said, "I don't know him." Like I was a stranger interrupting a celebration I had accidentally built for them. In that moment, standing in a sea of faces, I felt like a ghost attending my own funeral. Unseen. Unclaimed. Unwanted. The silence inside me grew. It thickened, heavy as wet paper. It smothered the part of me that once believed her when she said I made her feel seen. And in that suffocating quiet, something inside me collapsed. But something else, slowly uncurled. A different version of myself, sharper, colder, awake. When his presentation ended, the audience clapped. She smiled up at him, her eyes full of admiration I had once fought to earn. He bowed, basking in applause built from my work, my ideas, my sweat. My humiliation tasted metallic on my tongue, bitter, unforgettable. I swallowed it whole. She walked past me afterward, pretending I wasn't there. Not even a flicker of acknowledgement. Not even a ghost of affection. Just cold air where her presence used to be. And as she passed, a single thought rooted itself quietly, firmly, unshakably inside me. If she was going to erase me from her world, I would create a world so bright, so loud, so undeniably mine, that she would see my name every time she closed her eyes. She had chosen to forget me publicly. But I would become unforgettable. And that was the exact moment my heartbreak stopped being a wound. And became fuel. Pain doesn't whisper lessons, it carves them. And betrayal is a blade that slices so cleanly you don't realize you're bleeding until the floor is stained with pieces of who you used to be. In the weeks after the showcase, sleep became a stranger. My mind kept replaying the moment she looked past me like I was dust on a lens. The humiliation was a weight I carried everywhere, pulling at my spine until standing upright felt like defiance. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I worked. Not to forget her, because forgetting requires indifference I didn't yet possess. I worked to survive myself. My sketchbook became a battlefield. My studio, a confessional. Every line I drew felt like stitching together a version of myself she couldn't destroy. My heartbreak burned me down, yes, but in that burning, something sharper emerged. Someone who understood that silence wasn't surrender. Silence could be strategy. A blade held behind the ribs. And slowly, quietly, the world began to notice. The first spark was a short video someone posted of me painting at a cafe, my concentration, the rawness in my strokes. It went viral overnight. Then an interviewer called, wanting to feature my haunting creative process. Then a major brand reached out, asking if I'd design a limited collection. I said yes, not because I needed the validation, but because I finally stopped rejecting the version of myself who deserved to be seen. People said my work felt emotional, honest, like it carried pain that didn't apologize for existing. If only they knew those strokes were carved from the ruins she left behind. I didn't chase success. I simply stopped running from the potential she once made me doubt. The more the world opened to me, the more she faded. I no longer checked her socials at midnight to see if she looked happy. I stopped replaying her voice notes, stopped rereading the messages where she called me her safe place. The memories lost their shine. They became old photographs kept in a drawer I didn't open anymore. Then one evening, during my first solo exhibition, she appeared. I didn't notice her at first. I was surrounded by people, by praise, by bright lights reflecting off polished floors. Every painting on the wall carried a piece of my torment, transformed into something almost beautiful. My name hung on banners. My story was printed in brochures. And then, in the corner of the room, I saw her. She looked smaller. Not physically, but in presence. As if the light that once followed her had dimmed without my warmth to reflect off of. Her arms were folded tightly over her chest, like she was holding herself together. Her eyes scanned the walls, tracing every piece of art she had inspired, but not in the way she expected. My pain was framed in gold. And she was standing in front of it. Unable to look away. She tried to meet my eyes. I didn't give her the gift. I walked past her, answering questions from curators, shaking hands with people who had once ignored me. The air between us felt electric, charged with all the words she wanted to say and all the ones I refused to hear. Later that night, someone whispered to me over a glass of champagne. "She's been asking about you. She said she regrets everything, she wants to explain." Explain? As if there were words that could glue back a heart she had shattered publicly. Some wounds don't need explanations. They need consequences. And the consequence was this. She was now a spectator in a life she once tried to erase. My rise wasn't built out of revenge. It was built out of necessity, out of survival. But seeing her there, trembling, haunted by the glow she once dimmed, I realized something painfully poetic. I had become the memory she would never outrun. The ghost that lived behind her eyelids. The name she would avoid hearing, yet hear everywhere. And as I finally walked past her again, her lips parting, her breath catching, I didn't slow down. Because justice, I learned, does not always scream. Sometimes it simply walks away, leaving the one who betrayed you to drown in the brightness you became without them. She reached out eventually. It started with a single message, short, careful, as if she were afraid the words might bruise me on impact. "Hey, can we talk?" I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I didn't trust myself with the softness her voice used to pull out of me. Then another message came the next night. Then a third, longer this time. Her sentences spilled over each other, trembling in their urgency, like she was writing underwater. And then came the voice note. 32 seconds I never opened. The notification glowed on my screen like a wound I refused to reopen. Her apologies began to stack like letters slid under a locked door, unread, untouched, unanswered. Each one more desperate. More raw. More unlike the woman who once erased me without blinking. She said she missed me. That she made a mistake. That the man she chose wasn't who she thought he was. There was a time, not so long ago, when her regret would have felt like victory. When I would have run to her, breathless, grateful she remembered my name at all. I would have taken back every broken piece she left behind just for one more chance to be hers. But healing shifts the shape of your heart. It teaches you that some places you once called home were only shelters built to collapse. It teaches you that love without respect is a wildfire, not warmth. So I didn't respond. And life kept moving. Weeks later, we crossed paths, not by arrangement, but by the quiet, cruel choreography of fate. It was in a small gallery lobby after a charity event. People rushed past in glitter and noise, but the moment our eyes met, the world dimmed to a single, shaking breath. She froze first. I stopped second. "You look different," she whispered, almost afraid of the answer. I said. And it was the truest thing I'd spoken in years. Up close, she looked more fragile than I remembered. Not the glowing girl who once destroyed me under fluorescent lights. Her shoulders hunched inwards, her lips trembling at the edges. She looked like someone who had been living inside an apology she didn't know how to escape. "I'm sorry," she breathed, her voice cracking. "I thought you'd hate me forever." I shook my head. "I don't. Hate is loud. Heavy. Consuming." I didn't carry her that way anymore. She was a quiet echo now, still audible if the room was silent enough, but fading with every new step I took. "I don't belong in the past anymore," I said gently. Her expression faltered. Not dramatically, no gasp, no tears. Just a slow, quiet dimming, like a paper lantern losing its flame to the wind. It was the kind of sadness that doesn't scream, it sinks. "There was a time," I admitted, when I would have dropped everything just to stand this close to you again. Her breath hitched. And now? Now, I said, standing here doesn't hurt. But it also doesn't pull me back. She looked at me then, really looked. As if trying to memorize the version of me she had never expected to face. A version sculpted without her hands. A version who survived without her light. You became my favorite memory, she whispered. A confession. A plea. But now, you feel like a ghost. I smiled. Not mockingly. Not triumphantly. Just softly, truthfully. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'm just someone you never expected to live without. She blinked, and I watched realization settle over her like snowfall, silent, freezing, irreversible. She understood, finally, that she would carry me longer than I ever carried her. I stepped back. She reached forward, not enough to touch me, just enough to tremble. And I walked away. Not out of pride. Not out of anger. But out of peace. That was the real ending. Not revenge. Not reunion. Just freedom. A legacy carved not from the love she took, but from the person I became after she let it break.